Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woebegone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest's done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose fast withereth too. I met a lady in the midst, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wide. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew, and sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. She took me to her elfin grot, then there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses four. And there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamed, woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamt on the cold hillside. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La Belle Dame Sans Merci, thee hath enthralled. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here on the cold hillside. This is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing. It is written as a ballad, a form of narrative verse usually set to music. Folk ballads primarily recount tragic, comic, or heroic stories with an emphasis on a central dramatic event. They are part of the oral tradition and often contain a concise story that is fashioned with imagery rather than descriptions. Like most ballads, this poem is set to the rhyme scheme of A, B, C, B. Written in 12 quatrains, it is majorly written in iambic tetrameter, lines of 4 iambs, and iamb being a metric structure that consists of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. La Belle Dame Sans Merci, translating literally into a beautiful woman without mercy, is one of the most fondly remembered English poems and is a reflection of Keats' preoccupation with love and death. It is a story of a knight falling in love with what appears to be a woman of myth and then slipping away into death. Having only recently finished Circe by Madeline Miller, I cannot help but draw a liking, even if one cannot be sure that it was the poet's muse. The otherworldly woman, the beguiled mortal, and a tragic romance. An extract from the Poetry Foundation's analysis of the poem can prove relevant in understanding the context. It was written in the heat of his passion for Fanny, the fever of death hanging over him. He was on fire poetically, in love, growing ill, and suffering from depression. It begins with an observation by the poet. He sees a knight cutting a rather sorry figure, loitering alone in a space where the marshes have withered away and the birds are all silent. The knight is described as weary and exhausted, and when he says the granary is full, it might be construed that this season is autumn or winter. He appears to be pale as a lily, with the color in his cheeks fading away. From the 4th stanza, the voice changes and the knight narrates his story. He met a lady in the meadows with the longest hair, the lightest feet, and the wildest eyes. He made her garlands, rode double on a horse, and forgot the world as she sang her fairy song. These lines are further evidence that the love interest may not have been a mere mortal. That suggestion is strengthened when he talks of how she brought roots and honey and confessed her love in a strange language. He is taken to an elf's cave where she wept and then lulled him to a weird sleep. Now, this is where the poem abruptly shifts from a sickly love story to death. When he slept, he dreamt of deathly pale knights and princes who cried a line that became the title of the poem, La Belle Dame Sans Merci. When he woke, he found himself on the cold hillside. That is the explanation for the questions the poet raised in the first few stanzas. It is an obsessive love story that's narrated here, and there is no sugarcoating it. It is not the slow meander that ends up at happily ever after. It is a rushed and intoxicating romance, and it doesn't end well. All the men he dreamt of, they are others that have fallen hard in love, so to say. Again, serious Circe vibes here. What began arguably in self-defense ended for her in a slew of turning men into swine. This is, of course, the reverse perspective, and the fairies' act does not seem as intentioned as Circe's, but the trope of a toxic relationship ending in doom cannot be discounted. Of course, it might just be the story of a knight being enchanted in love, to an extreme, of course, but that's where the mystery of the poem lies, in its being caught between fantasy and reality, fairy and human, love and death. With its rich imagery and carefully chosen language, it's an intriguing love poem if it can at all be called one.